Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are on your own screen, and welcome to our show. Today, we have the pleasure to have Kishan Chetan with us. And after a very interesting working history, which I found quite thrilling, and I found also the positive, let's say, meet up with Thomas for 2 years roundabout in SAP. You have been with Siebel, you have been with HPE, you have touched down with Microsoft, and it's an interesting development. You have learned a lot of industry specifics, you have an experience gained in overall CRM, and now you are responsible for the Service Cloud ecosystem and have there a very interesting and challenging role. So I guess now I'm burning out of curiosity, Kishan, and what in your short span CV overview did I miss?
No, first of all, Ralph, thank you for the warm welcome, and thank you, Thomas, for following up and making sure that we're on that. First, thank you both for having me and hosting me. No, I think you did a fantastic job of articulating to the CV. Maybe the only thing that I'll articulate to the team here is through my professional and personal careers, I've had the pleasure of living and working in Canada, US, India, Europe, and travels and two different parts of Europe. So I've had the pleasure of being in different places, and that's always something that I'm very fond of, to have the different cultural backgrounds and the varied work experiences, which I think gives a fantastic perspective overall of what's important for our customers and what's important overall for everybody.
Which continent or challenging one?
Which content is a challenging one?
Mm-hmm.
Winters in Canada can be very hard. When it's minus 20 outside, it can be tough. By the same token, summers in India are pretty hot too. So, I like this middle of the world, 20 degrees centigrade and 60 to 70 degrees Fahrenheit. That's the perfect one. So where we are right now is awesome. Of course, rain in Seattle can be a little distinct too.
Now you have 9 months of misery.
Well, we have 6 months of joy. We'll deal with the misery afterwards.
Just go for Costa Rica, Kishan, because there you have a level of humidity which is nice. You have a quite constant temperature, around about 23 to 26 degrees. So nothing to worry about, and you have less wardrobe to carry.
There you go. I think that sounds about right. It should be hopefully one of the happiest places on earth. But then again, I know the Nordics are usually the happiest place on earth, and I also had the pleasure of being in Denmark, and I can totally see why they are the happiest people on earth. So,
yeah. Well, with all this chit chat, you are doing Service Cloud right now, and well, you didn't start your career with service or customer service, but migrated into it. Still, the question is quite interesting. So first, how does one get into service as a branch, and where does service start and end?
Yeah, I think, look, it's a great question. And I think I fundamentally believe that, everybody, whether you like it or not, in all of their fields is in sales and is in service. Across the board, if you look at any of your organizations, look, I started my career as an engineer, and one of the first projects that one of my leaders put me on was not just building code, but actually working with some of our largest customers who were at that point of time not very pleased, and so we had to work with them, understand what was needed. In my way, it was service in a very different way, not service to solve a ticket, but service in the broader context of making them happy and having customer success. So I think everybody in some sense cares about customer service. And speaking of the questions of where customer service starts and ends, my belief and what we've been focused on is fundamentally we believe service is limitless. And what I mean by that is, if you think about it, customers and consumers expect service throughout their entire journey, right? If I'm buying, a complex product, let's say a car, or let's say a high-end audio system, I want to understand more about the product. I want to get people to answer questions. Some of it is sales, but some of it is like actually product experts answering questions. So that's kind of during the pre-sales process. And then during the sales process, there's a little bit of kind of service, especially if you're online in e-commerce, you might still have some questions through the whole process. And there's, of course, the post-sale service that most of us are familiar with. So we fundamentally believe that service is throughout. The reality of the matter is, historically, service was always like kind of perceived and is perceived as a cost. So that basically meant you only did service when it was really necessary, because cost became a factor. But as the technology curve changes and you can actually provide more and more service at lower cost throughout the entire journey, a lot of it driven by AI, a lot of it driven by better cost structures, I think service is truly kind of limitless throughout the entire journey from pre-sales to post-sales. And then the second part of like the way we look at kind of service is, we're speaking a lot about customer service here, but we believe like service needs to be across all types of service, right? So in customer service, there's self-service, there's contact center, there's field service, and then there's the same service that you provide to your employees with HR and with IT. So we look at like service being kind of spanning that whole spectrum, from both employee, customer, and all types of service.
So you gained a lot of experience from coming from all the industries and all the other touch points, which is going directly into the next level of seeing through all these areas and touch points of service opportunities. Now, having said that, where do you help most from your perspective, adding some more artificial intelligence into the day-by-day life?
Yeah, makes sense. I think, look, 100%, I think your point about industries is extremely well taken. If you look at public sector is all about service to stakeholders and citizens. So definitely like service is crucial. If you look at financial services, everything that you have as a part of like a retail banking transaction, or in a more wealth management context, has like sales and service built into it in the entire flow. So industries have been driving our kind of service strategy quite a bit. And coming into AI, I kind of see it as very high level as kind of three core areas of AI. One is what I call self or autonomous, and it's kind of a combination of different things. Customer service has always been, I mentioned about the cost area, right? Service has always been about trying to manage costs, drive things that they call deflection, which is basically like making sure that I can solve this problem without having a human answer it. And I think that goes through a significant change, because suddenly things become a lot more conversational. You can have a true conversation with a customer on or with a company on the phone, with voice, on chat, on WhatsApp, on text, in a very interactive way, like how the customers feel, and that drives a lot of the service. And then while we do all of this, the usual Google or search and websites don't go away. So having these next generation of web and portal experiences, which are truly integrated with the conversational experiences, that is huge. So that's one big area where AI plays a very big part in kind of self-service or the more autonomous area. The second one, which is, again, this is not in any order of like priority, etc. The second one is making the service steps a lot more productive, what I call assisted service. That could involve like productivity things like, hey, help me summarize messages quicker, help me respond better. But to more advanced kind of agentic capability, like what we did, which is essentially tell a agent on how to solve a problem. These 5 steps you need to do. This is how you drive automation, and that really helps like agents scale, drive better productivity. And one last stat is, in our state of the service survey, 70+% of our service customers and service teams are now increasingly tasked to drive growth. So it's not just about solving customer problems. You're driving overall accountability and growth. That could mean, upselling. That could mean accountable for customer success, whatever are the metrics. So providing and arming these services reps with or agents, human agents, with the right way to do the next best action, the right way to drive growth becomes very crucial. And the third one is I spoke about assisted and self-service, and that's crucial. The third one kind of spans both of them, but it's a more industry-specific, scenario. So, if you're in financial services, having the right type of support during the financial service transaction process, like know your customer process, so that can be much more seamless. If you're in healthcare, doing that during like the claims adjudication process. So having that right kind of industry-specific AI becomes very crucial in the overall service context.
You just said something quite interesting, so that I rephrase it. Basically, you're saying the website is going away. So, well, at least I heard you saying this.
Not going away. Not going away.
I might be a bit hard at hearing, but if at least the websites will change.
Yes, it'll change.
I think, with that, the web itself will change. How do you see that go on? So what is the next evolution of the website then?
Yeah, I mean, if you look at it right now, right? I mean, I was actually giving this anecdote to somebody. If you look at the current websites right now, they're very organized by having a lot of knowledge, especially from a support context. There's an ungated website which has a set of knowledge pages, websites trying to provide product information, troubleshooting, FAQ, and all of that good stuff. And you have something similar when you're logged in. You have much more specific actions, like log into your bank portal, I can file a ticket, and I can do these 4 or 5 things, which is all good, right? Because quite often people will still search on a search engine, maybe a Google, somewhere else comment. So that doesn't change. But I think what will change is, once you're in there, how do you engage? Like, can I have a truly conversational experience right from where I am with the right context? So I'm like trying to search and find out information about my smart fridge, and I've specifically focused on an area around how do the cameras in the fridge help me order food? Can I actually immediately have the conversation with that context versus typing in things into it? And when I'm actually having a conversation in a conversational experience, and I moved on from the smart fridge to some other area, should the website automatically be refreshed to have this kind of really engaging conversation? So I think that's kind of the change that I was speaking about. Just to give you a concrete anecdote, I was driving yesterday, and there was this warning sign in my car. And there's so many icons right now, it's impossible to I had a guess that maybe it's like engine, and that was like, okay, an engine light in a car is perhaps not a very good thing. And I wanted to figure out where it is. So I was driving with my wife, and she tried to open the manual and look at the index and the table of contents and try to find it, and it's pretty hard to do that, right? So I just took a photo of that thing and put it on ChatGPT and said, tell me the issue, right? And I got the answer in 5 seconds with a very, very good one. Now imagine doing that on the support website of the car. In actually even better, the app that all of us have likely about our smart cars, and do a search and have that be powered by some OpenAI interface. And from there you can click the link, go back to your website, do additional things there. That's, I think, the experience of how it would be integrated and interacted. There are times when you want to read, there are times when you want to converse, there are times when you want to talk. I think that's the blendedness and kind of what we call agentic portals, which is really bringing in all the experiences together versus siloed experiences.
So you can kind of expect a hybrid between visual and textual audio.
Absolutely, because that's how we think, right? That's how we process information, and that's how we are trying to drive it. And I expect our customers, especially as the customer base broadly and the consumers become younger, their ability to interact with technology is very different, and people are just going to be visual, right? I mean, how often do you now try to describe a photo that you saw and put it into a search engine and try to translate into words? That's what we used to do 5-10 years ago. You don't need to do that anymore. You just put a photo, and things get better. So I think that multimodal nature is super crucial, especially in service, right? Like, you have a problem with your washing machine or dishwasher at home. How do you troubleshoot that with your customer? You're best to take a photo of the error message and send it to somebody who's in the contact center or doing VR, and it's just much more effective to do that go drive kind of quicker resolution. So this technology is just going to help not just like save costs for the organizations, but actually help drive customer satisfaction, help drive better engagement, and hopefully, as our technology and everything that we're doing gets better, it drive much better self-service as well.
Mm-hmm. So looking into different areas, where do businesses, let's not talk about their customers yet, but businesses get the most benefit from applying AI technologies, be it something like Agentforce or something that is, let's say, quote unquote, lesser, simpler?
Yeah, I think, look, from a service context, we have seen customers get like multiple benefits from, AI and agentic technology, right?
Mhm.
So if you looked at it broadly, I mean, customers already with using a lot of our predictive capabilities, we're already getting pretty significant benefits.
Mhm.
So that includes better classification of your service issues,
Mhm.
like case classification, better routing so that your case doesn't get bounced around by multiple people, but it goes to the
Mhm.
right person. So in general, like with predictive capabilities and like AI in the flow of work, broad numbers, we're seeing
Mhm.
about 30 to 40% improvement in what I call case resolution. What it boils down to is, can I address a customer question more quicker, more
Mhm.
effectively, etc. So that I think is one frame. The second frame is as you kind of go drive more and more kind of autonomous service. And what I mean by that is like answer more questions autonomously, be able to tackle a lot of Q&A, be able to drive actions from it. Like, I want to update my address. And I could go to the website and go to the portal and try to do that in a bank, or I could go send a WhatsApp or a text message to somebody saying, this is what I want to update to, this is my address. That drives like a higher volume and even more faster resolution. We think it's like about 80% based on our survey. So I think that's where we are seeing metrics. And kind of the
Mhm.
customer impacting metrics are a few things, right? Like if you look at a service context, the most obvious one is average handle time. So can I actually, do this call quicker? Can I, finish the call quicker? Can I
Mhm.
respond to messages quicker? Can I summarize this quicker? So post call time and handle time overall, like
Mhm.
make everything more productive. The other one, which is super crucial, is customer satisfaction.
Mhm.
At the end of the day, if you resolve it appropriately without a lot of onus and headaches for the customer, so they don't have to repeat the same information, they get answers immediately resolved, that typically drives up customer satisfaction. And we've seen customers with like fantastic improvements in customer sat. But those are the two key metrics that that we track. Then the other one in a contact center setting is that there's a huge amount of churn in a lot of contact centers. So the more you can get like your employees actually more productive and more satisfied with their tools, that actually helps with retention, which is huge as well in a service setting.
So basically, also with that, you're basically saying customers also should look at two metrics, basically efficiency metrics, as well as customer satisfaction as an outcome matrix.
Yeah, efficiency
Right?
metrics, customer satisfaction as an outcome metrics, and the third
Mhm.
metric is your employee satisfaction and your employee productivity.
Mhm.
Because the more your employees like the tools they're working with, the more they can kind of drive their own growth,
Mhm.
the more they can drive their success, and the more you can drive retention. All of which are important. Like churn in contact centers is very high in several scenarios. If you can actually shave off points from there, that'll be significant. But yes,
Mhm.
efficiency in terms of your employees' productivity, their satisfaction, and of course customer satisfaction.
Mhm. The interesting thing, I of course did a bit of research around success stories of various kinds by various vendors. So what most of them are telling is they are not talking much about customers satisfaction, not much about experience. They are not much talking about uplift, but what they are talking, well, definitely not about employee experience, but what they are talking about is cost savings. So, which is, well, a suboptimal message, I'd say, or not enough of a message. because it's a rat race. If you're only talking about cost savings, you can save only that much. What do your clients that you work with do in order to alleviate fear that their employees may or well very likely have, to get fear out of them, because fear makes them not productive, so that it basically eats up all productivity gains that one may get by using advanced technology. So, but by making it more man and machine versus the narrative that comes forward not every now and again, but far too often, which is machine instead of man.
Yeah, I mean, listen, if you look at our core, it's a really important question, right?
Yeah.
I think it's top of mind for service leaders, service practitioners. I've spoken to a lot of thought leaders on this. This is definitely top of mind. I mean, our fundamental belief is and it's not just service specific, broadly, is humans and AI together drive better customer success, drive better customer trust, and that I think is crucial. I mean, just to give you concrete customer anecdotes, like I had we have our summit for key service customers, and one of our service customers was very clear. Like, it's a high tech company, driving growth. Their thing is simple. They grow in the double digits every year, 10 to 15% or even more, but they just can't hire 10 to 15% more people to actually drive the growth, both from it doesn't make sense from a cost structure and a margin perspective. But second, it's actually hard to hire 10% more support teams and get them trained on complex things. So the key message for them, for their teams, is, listen, we have all this work coming our way and all this load. How can we handle it and do that more effectively with the people that we have, and adding some people that'll help? I think that's number one point. The number two point is around the fact that there is a point of automation that really helps, because the last thing you want your service people to do is to just keep handling a bunch of hey, I have a problem with my login, can you help me reset that login problem, versus actually solving what is impactful for the customer. So as you kind of automate a lot of those kind of low-hanging fruit and drive automation in there, you are solving the harder ones, and your customers are likely more satisfied. And as you are engaging with your customers and you have better answers for them with the AI that's sitting beside you, with the agent sitting beside you, the customers are more satisfied. And in general, service reps are happier when their customers are happy as well. Nobody wants to be in irate customer calls day in and day out, right? So I think those factors make a real strong play in it. And as more service reps tend to have growth targets, like our studies indicate, like almost 75% of them have growth targets. Higher customer satisfaction implies that they will be able to upsell, they will be able to drive their growth, and it's super crucial. So we look at it as a combination of cost and efficiency. Look, cost is always going to be a factor, right? Because if you can, everybody wants to grow their margin, so that doesn't go away, but it's not at the cost of, no pun intended, at the cost of better quality and better better value for the customer, because otherwise the customer will will not be satisfied, can churn, all of those things that you don't want.
No, it's still cost is a race to the bottom. So there can be only one Walmart, well, in Germany, one Aldi, which is the cost leader in retail, food retail, basically, in Germany. So, which means that the gains are limited there. So what are suggestions that how something like Agentforce, for example, can impact in margin improvement, in upsell, uplift? So basically, or more share of market, more share of wallet. So how can something like an agentic system work well into that direction?
Yeah.
Also coming from the service scenario, because there we are back to upselling and cross-selling, basically, or using the service incident as a sales opportunity.
Exactly. I mean, I think that's one of the key powers of like the way Agentforce has been designed, which is the idea of the ability for an agent and agentic experience to add like more skills to that. So, it take like a financial service setting. You can not only address and address some of the questions, but you can go and schedule like an in-person appointment. We have like a strong scheduling capability with as a part of our field service that is broadly available now. So scheduling and getting somebody to come in person and meet somebody, a human in person, that's outstanding. We can also add skills around being able to upsell and provide the right amount of offers. So we have our sales agent both to kind of generate business and to coach sellers. So we can bring in this idea of a service and a sales agent and the industry specific skills. So the ability to like figure out what your business process needs are, what your skills are, that becomes really crucial. In fact, in a service context, we kind of look at it in a maybe a simplistic perspective, but I look at it the whole world as almost like three types of customers, if I may, right? Like in a simplistic way. One is what I call more very action oriented. So I'm going into my UPS or going into my logistics provider. I want to find out when the package is going to land. I want to answer a question about where it is. Very quick things, quick, high volume, want to get the question answered and want to kind of drive one action, maybe reschedule the package or don't deliver it today, etc. So their automation is outstanding because you can go really drive very clear workflows. Salesforce is the system of record for a lot of these workflows. Using agentic actions on top, you can drive a huge amount of customer speed, because it's not just deflection, it's actually speed for the customer, right? I don't want to necessarily speak to my logistics rep for just rescheduling something. The second is more what I call order oriented. So you're in customer, you're in retail, you're in consumer goods, you're in any B2C things. You're basically trying to find out more about your order. You might want to cancel your order. You might want to upsell. There, it really depends on your business process. Like, if you're a luxury customer, I don't necessarily want my customer to cancel my order in an automated way. I want to have a rep speak to them because I might be able to talk them out of it, or I might be able to have another alternative. I might need to understand what the problem is. Or if I'm trying to buy another product, you want somebody to talk to them, right? So there, it's a business process need to bring to a person because it's driven by revenue. And the final one is what I call a knowledge-based, which is the idea of it's a complex product. Like, if you're in a networking equipment business or like in our own business in Salesforce, we have like, 50, 60,000 knowledge articles where you need to go look at these knowledge articles, provide very contextual answers, and Agentforce runs on our help.salesforce.com, addresses like 80 to 90% of inquiries. There, it's a lot of it is both deflection and self-service by providing the contextual answer, but second, also making sure that the reps are more productive, because they need to be able to quickly get answers based on like detail, like product documents and other things, where having like the unstructured data, processing it makes a difference. So depending on each of these scenarios, you'll have different type of like agentic use cases. And that's why we believe like we have the customer facing agents, we have the employee facing agents to drive productivity, and then we have this AI in the flow of work which uses prompts and our prompt studio to make the the reps far more effective, far more productive. Like, draft me a simple message. That doesn't need a huge agentic experience. It requires very contextual and highly personalized experience. So that's how we look at AI helping to the entire end-to-end process.
You have been one of the first organizations which has thought about trust, not only because it's one of your mission statements, but especially when it comes to the different security layers. Thomas wrote articles about it and gave you kudos for going forward in this direction. But the German angst is something which is in everybody's mouth if he is touching down Europe soil, or especially Germany, larger German-speaking Europe. That driver is challenging all vendors, such as they are risk aware, they are not open to change, they are not too open to innovations. Now, what is your approach in building more trust for these very risk shy or very GDPR and European AI Act loving audiences? How do you help them to build the trust into your complete ecosystem?
Yeah, no, I mean, look, trust is a huge, factor overall. Trust across like multiple dimensions, I think really matter.
Agreed. Yeah.
And no, thank you for the feedback, and thank you, Thomas, for all the engagement that we've done. I mean, we started with kind of trust at the core of our AI and Agentforce. So I think having the trust layer, making sure that there's a set of trust, right? The first one is, of course, the more technical security, making sure that the data that's there from a customer doesn't necessarily go train the models, make those the data doesn't get leaked into the model, so to speak. All of that layer of like honoring the privacy, making sure that there's a trust. I think that is kind of in some sense square one, right? The second one is, how do we make sure that it also adheres to a lot of the security and trust policies that you've already built into your processes, right? The customers can only see this, or the employees only have access to this type of information. Like, if you're health or financial services, there are very strict rules about who can look at which data and how do you handle that data. So we have a very sophisticated kind of access management and everything that we built over several years. How do we ensure that the agentic layer essentially respects that and doesn't deviate from that, right? I mean, I think, like, you need to think of agent as almost like another employee who has certain roles and responsibilities and who has the right access, etc. So I think that becomes important from that perspective, right? So that there's no other thing. The third one is trust from a different angle, which is the efficacy of your results, which is if your customers and your customers don't see the right answer, so they see something which is not accurate, that starts to erode trust in the efficacy of that solution. It might not be trust in the sense that the data might still be secure, the data might not get leaked, but adoption starts to go away. People's belief in that starts to go away. So they're making sure that we have the right testing, making sure that it's like the right efficacy that becomes important. And like finally, the last one, which you mentioned, which is super crucial, which is how do we ensure that you have the right data residency, the right sovereignty, and also the right compliances, right? Like we have a large public sector business. I was very involved in our public sector business, especially at the time of COVID and throughout there. Public sector, health, all of these have like a lot of proprietary information, very strong regulation. We have a government cloud with high compliance and trust layer built into it, and now Agentforce is also available within that boundary. So that means it respects everything and all of the compliances and the needs within that boundary. Similar story around HIPAA, for example. Very clear rules about who can see patient information, how do you handle that patient information. That's a great ability to handle. We have similar compliances around financial services. Then of course we have the sovereign clouds and sovereign needs. And there, the great news is that Agentforce was built on everything else, right? Built on our unified platform. We've made a lot of investments in Hyperforce so that it can work in different geographies and can be like sovereign in that geography with the right data residency. So Agentforce is built on top of Hyperforce. So as we kind of inherit all of the benefits of our stack, we start to inherit like the security benefits, the trust benefits across the board on our stack. So we look at trust across the different layers, and I think that's the super crucial one, all the way from like security to sovereignty to efficacy of the answers and the solutions. I think all of them, each of them has a strong part in making sure that the overall solution is seen as trusted, right? I mean, like we can remember from our previous generations of AI solutions, if the end users that solution is designed for don't trust it, that always hinders adoption. So we have to even think of that as kind of a key trust factor.
Which is actually quite an interesting dilemma, because I mean, we want to do, if we have trust, or if the system is trustworthy, let's put it like that, then the scope for possible automation is higher, which means that the uplift for the user business is higher. On the other hand, we have something like trust but verify, which basically sets a limit to automation. So where do you see a realistic and useful threshold for automating processes? Of course, I mean, in highly regulated, there's a different one, and when it comes to medic, then there's probably a different one as well, as opposed to giving a password reset link, which probably has a higher error tolerance than, well, unlucky you got terminal cancer.
Yeah. I mean, totally with you, right? Like we've all had experiences where, we go into something and they're like, well, you can't reset your password for the next 5 days, deal with it, right? So you're like, okay.
Yeah.
So I think like it's the easiest, I guess, consulting answer, which is like, my belief is it depends, right? And the reason why I'm saying that is, I think like the same kind of dimensions of action versus knowledge versus order, I think there are a set of things that you want to automate. You already likely have automation built in one way or the other. You might have a workflow that's already built in that, your human rep now kind of starts and automates. Can you actually make that more available to the customer directly? Can you drive higher automation? I think that's definitely there. From a business process perspective, you might not want to automate something because it represents growth. The other thing that we've done and put a lot of investment in is also agentic experiences that start actually with the human agent. So in a way, it's human in the loop, but it's slightly more nuanced than that. So we have this thing called service rep assistant, like powered by Agentforce. And we spoke all about the autonomous agent for service, but here in the service agent, what it does is it creates this plan for automation. It can even say this is how you would automate and drive some of those automations. And the way it's designed is, of course, it looks at historical conversations, historical data, knowledge bases, etc. And the way we've designed it is, over a period of time, as you look at customers and they look at a specific process, let's say it's know your customer process in a financial services, if enough of the times the human rep is essentially taking the recommendation of the system and they're basically going through it with like almost no changes, I think it's ready for automation, right? It likely is better. So you can, in a more risk averse industry, in a more regulated industry, you can potentially take that path, which is not just a human in the loop checking like the responses, but looking at the automations, driving that automation with a human assisted, but move it to autonomous over a period of time. But in some cases, like things like order checking, logistics, Q&A questions, I think there's just a demand to automate it right away, and then be judicious about your industry and your regulation. Do you want to give it health advice in an automated Q&A? You want to be careful about that. So I think that's where the industry and the regulation comes in. But otherwise, that's kind of how I see the continuum of automation.
So now there's the other interesting situation. I mean, we have always all heard of the cases where some lawyer gave let's say, interesting quotes of law cases to judges who happen to not find them then. Yeah. So that this is not only a result of hallucination, but this is a result of people trusting the system. So the system basically already working as an agent. So now there is, interesting enough, also a different reaction on both sides. So first, Thomas makes the mistake, or Thomas bot makes the mistake. So which to some extent contradicts the narrative of the digital employee. So what do you recommend your clients, and how shall they react in situations where the machine does a mistake or the human makes a mistake? Ultimately, the effect to the outside is pretty much the same. just wrong information, wrong advice given, a wrong discount given that shouldn't have been given. That was Air Canada, if you remember that one.
Yeah, no,
Or,
100%.
or the car dealership
Yes.
that had
Gave
been bought.
away a luxury car for an apple and an egg, to say so. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, look, there are always going to be those things.
Yeah, there will always be, and they will make the news, of course. Because
there'll always be those scenarios and situations that are there.
Yeah.
But I think it's like really important to also like balance that with all of the progress, right? Like, I mean, we have our customers across different industries. Like, we have somebody like British Air or Heathrow, who I was in London a couple of weeks ago. We had Heathrow speak about the event. They have a digital concierge which answers a whole bunch of questions, because look, Heathrow is such a busy airport, highest traffic in the world. Just getting people to answer questions and getting quick information about like where to find like food, or how do you do the transit, and with all of the complexities that are there, I think it just makes sense. Now, you're 100% right about like tolerance to answers. I think the important thing is to and the technology provides it, which is how can I do better quality, both in real time, post facto, understand where the problems are. So we have this thing that we look at called customer experience intelligence based on customer signals. But what it's doing is, it's not just like traditionally you wait back and get a customer survey and try to understand things worked or things didn't work. But now you have the ability to look at a transcript of what happened in a specific call or in a specific interaction, whether that's with an agent or whether that's with a human. And then you can start to see what was the sentiment, what was the intent, did we have any quality issues, can we correct it, should we update like our knowledge and our articles because something here is wrong. I think the success of this is going to be determined by not just fire and forget, but constantly be able to monitor, constantly be able to understand like how good is it, tweak it, tune it. And before, you perhaps did a random sampling of a set of things because that's what your cost structure would enable you. Now you have the pleasure of being able to do it at a bigger scale, and you need to operationalize it and institutionalize it. So it won't go away, but I think we just need to have like systems in place and more technology in place to kind of drive it, or drive the entire process. And it's an interesting one. Like, it's always a good question. I'll always ask myself the question: would people care more about Thomas making a mistake or Thomas bot making a mistake? Right?
Yeah. I mean,
And I
the outcome is the same, right?
Yeah, the outcome is the same. I think the answer is it depends, right? I mean, like, it depends on the setting, depends on the industry. People might attribute more weight to like a human rep, like for example, in a healthcare setting, if you're speaking to a trusted representative, a healthcare representative, you'd attribute a lot of weight to that because that's the relationship that you'd like to have. But if you're in something where you're trying to find out quickly about an order that you just ordered online, I think you might never get to the human, so you actually do trust the agent you're working with. So I think it depends on the setting. I think the key is to just make sure that the incidents keep going down, and you're constantly like looking to manage quality. I mean, even when we implemented our help.salesforce.com, our customer support team constantly looked at answers, questions, and saw if the responses were right, tweaked our guidelines, tweaked the things in Agentforce so that the answers just got better. And that's something that you have to constantly keep doing. I mean, there's no other way. I mean, this is, you're putting your brand, you're putting your products, you're putting your reputation out there as a company. So you have and it has to be treated as such. It's that simple.
A question on that one, not only on the one about putting your brand reputation at risk, but do you know an insurance company which is insuring that risk? For humans, you might get these insurances, but would they insure your bot service? I honestly don't know, so that's the reason why I ask.
Yeah, I mean, I must say, we should go look up anything, and maybe it's actually a good business, right?
We should ask AI.
Yeah, there you go. We should. I think. Look, at the end of the day, I mean, we built a lot of, and it's technology, and I think it's based on customer demand. We in our Agentforce 3.0, we announced Command Center. We've been doing that in the service business, is where we're looking at like our enterprise as a combination of human agents and AI agents. So it's something
Yeah.
that we'd have it. Like we have a command center where you can see the entire performance. You can see, are things getting escalated from a human, from an agent to a human? Are there more quality issues in one versus the other? So I think you absolutely start to look at essentially like digital agents and digital employees as a part of your overall workforce. So everything that applies, whether that's insurance, whether that's other factors, start to apply to this as well. Of course, you perhaps don't need health insurance the same way for an AI agent, but starting to look at what it means for the company, what it means for your overall brand perspective. How do you train with the brand voice? How do you address that? I think that needs to be holistic. I mean, in service and contact center, I think in some sense you're ahead of it, because you are truly treating your capacity and your workforce as a combination of thereof. But in a sales team, when you have a virtual BDR along with your BDRs or a business business development representative, you need to start looking at that. So I think we'll evolve. I think there'll be new business models, new business cases. Maybe we need to go to a few insurance companies and suggest this as a great business idea.
Yeah.
Or else you can do a startup for insurances there.
Well, insurers are already there to give an answer from my end. I'm working with a startup that uses models, and builds solutions based upon these models. And guess what the insurers are saying? Oh, you're using AI, so we rack up your payments. We make it more expensive because there's higher risk. Simple as. Yeah. So insurances are good in collecting money, but talking about insurance means risk. Yeah, there's an interesting question coming in from Graham Robson right now, or a minute ago. He asked, "What dangers do you see with using AI for customer service management?" So we looked at the upsides, but we looked at mistakes. But what are the effective dangers?
Yeah, I mean, I think like everything else, if you look at it from the perspective of like self-service and assisted service. In self-service, if you have more siloed use of AI, it doesn't have the full customer context, it doesn't have the full customer picture. Are you going to end up with like solutions which are not personalized, or solutions which are plain wrong, right? So in some cases, in more important industries concerning your health or concerning your finances, they could actually have more impactful impacts on your customers. So I think being very judicious and careful about that makes a lot of sense. Now, on the side of the assisted, if you give the wrong information to somebody on how to fix something, and somebody who's representing your company and your brand actually uses that to provide the wrong information, then it actually could have a strong impact on your customer success, right? And on your customer sat. So I think there are implications like that, specifically when it comes to people's health, people's finances, and well-being broadly. I think there are definitely implications around that. So I think just making sure, to a great extent, that trust which I mentioned around the efficacy starts to come into picture in a big way. And then finally, you don't want people's information going out from a trust perspective. So that's where it becomes important. But yeah, I think that's where I think there could be like risks that are coming out of the use of AI in customer service.
Is it fair to say that the dangers are pretty much the same as using people for service management? Because I mean, they can make mistakes as well.
No, absolutely. I mean, listen, that's always like a really good question, which is, are people going to make the same mistakes versus agents? What is the consequence of that? And I think, look, that's the reason why we have rules in place, which is, there's regulation in the market on who can give you financial advice, who can give you investing advice. There's rules around that. There's regulation around who can give you and what training do they have to give you medical advice? And I go back to those examples because there's a certain amount of regulation there. And I think those matter, right? Those laws, by and large, that have been developed have kept us safe. Like whether when it's FDA approving drugs, there's a whole bunch of regulation that's come in. The question is, what part of that and which subsets of that will apply to agentic experiences, and how does it work? So you're 100% right. Mistakes can happen everywhere, and that can have some impacts. But over a period of time, I think we've tried to kind of understand those. We've tried to create the expertise. We've tried to create skills. We've tried to create regulation, a combination of different things to solve it. We need to have that same discipline to do that for our agentic experiences. I think that's kind of the key thing. And, this is a far broader problem, far more important problem, likely consumes all of us, and likely something that our regulators need to understand, and I'm sure they're thinking about it. So I think there are multiple touch points that come in from there. I just feel that there's been much more thought and much more deliberation that's gone into kind of human-driven experiences.
Coming back a little, well, diving into trust. So there is a possibility for kind of over-reliance. Well, let's face it, everybody is working under pressure. That's why we are automating stuff away. And everybody of us shall do more with less or faster, which basically means, okay, I trust it, I rely on it, I don't really check it. So, and this can lead to mistakes as usual. So how, and still we are reacting different to mistakes done by a system as by humans, for good as for bad. So how can we mitigate this risk of over reliance, being overly depending on those systems while still gaining the efficiency gains that we crave and that we need?
Yeah, no, I mean, listen, I think it's a really, really good question, right? Which is, are we dependent on a whole bunch of productivity information? I mean, I think, look, to a great extent, we a lot of transformation that we have seen during our lifetime has changed how we do stuff. Like, what was the last time you actually wrote like a paper on something? You use a word processor for something, right? What was the last time you read a manual without doing a search in some other way to get the answer? So I think we've taken a lot of these productivity ones for granted over a period of time, right? So I remember when I was growing up, I would do a lot of math. Well, most kids now do calculators, or maybe they go ask Alexa questions. I think, is that a question? Is the question is that an atrophy of your skills? Or is that something that anyway was commoditized so that you can focus your energies on the more creative, the harder problems, the ones which require this thing? So I think that's always an interesting question. I'm an optimist, I'm a technologist. I fundamentally believe that this will enable us to free up our capacity for doing the more creative, the harder problems. And that's kind of the way I kind of think about it. And in the service context, right, like we could say, if you have a service rep assistant which sits beside you and tells you exactly how to solve this problem, like, why do we, like, is the contact center agent not going to run and learn anything? I think they still do, because they have to first make sure that that's right. They're the ones who receive the feedback from the customer, whether that's right. This is essentially a skill to kind of go help you get more productive and get well. I think we all, like, in some sense, I expect all of our training from schools and from universities, etc., to have this world of how do we, like, expand our knowledge and expand everything with having AI beside us and helping us, and that still will, like, not take away our learning experiences, our creative experiences, etc. So I think that challenge is there from, of course, from an education purpose, but also will come into the professional arena, because you might get a help on how to solve it, but you still need to understand, like, what's the customer sentiment. You still need to understand all those nuances, and you still need to be understanding like what are the questions you might need to ask to get the right answer. I think that's where the human ingenuity and the human kind of learning experience will come in.
What do you think would be indicators for kind of a slow de-skilling and over-reliance on the system? So let's 30 years ago, when GPS systems for cars came up, the first news that really hit home was, Mercedes driver at best, so trusted his GPS system. I mean, he had a very trustworthy car. And the first thing that this system did to him is misjudging a ferry for a bridge, and he drove into the river. So means he over-relied. Similar navigation scenarios for years ago, decades ago, centuries ago, people did celestial navigation. So they had some formulas, some table books, and a sextant and math skills. Now, what do? I'm a sailor, so what do? I use a chart plotter. I give point A, give point B, and have the AI plan the route.
Yeah.
So, and this route, I of course mostly trust. But then what happens again? So you trust your chart plotter, and every now and again, someone runs on a reef that wasn't which was on the chart plotter, just that the chart was not on enough of a detail level. So, which means there is an over-reliance of trust. So this is a thing in all sorts of areas, leisure areas as well as business areas. What do you think or what do you say your customers are indicators that over-reliance is starting to kick in?
Yeah, I mean, that's a thing that we perhaps have to think through a little bit. What at least I've seen in the various customer engagements that I've had is that as you have more and more automation from a self-service perspective, or more guidance from a service perspective, what I've kind of realized is that the harder issues that maybe were going away, or customers just wouldn't try to deal with it, right? Like customers would be unhappy about something not working perfectly well. If it was something that would totally not work, they'd come back to it. But in several cases, the harder things did not get surfaced, or there were very few of them. I think the customer service teams are now getting challenged, and the human reps are getting challenged to solve the harder problems, because the more obvious, repetitive, easier ones are tackled. And I think the harder problems are not like something that you immediately can have AI solve you. The AI has to keep learning along with you, and there's a certain amount of ingenuity that you will have to come up with as well in order to go solve it. That could be changing the process, that could be changing things. In fact, like there's a high-tech company which had a fantastic like self-service and assisted service company. And the reason why they were so successful is their service reps were very knowledgeable, and they continued to enhance their knowledge and make sure that the knowledge bases were accurate, because that drove better service. So like where it's kind of helping with is driving better institutional knowledge and better kind of ability for humans to ask the right questions, understand what is the right set of responses that they're getting, and driving it. So I think that's the important thing. I think the way I would see it is, are they still continuing to drive higher customer satisfaction? Are they solving harder service cases? That would be the metrics to make sure that they're not atrophying.
Okay, so in appreciation of your time, because I could continue for several hours now. So, but I am quite sure that your PA would have some choice words towards me in that case. Let's get to what I usually call the famous last words.
Yeah.
Make it simple. Make it simple for you. And I don't want to terminate you. We just need to terminate this.
I think for me it's very simple. I think the key message I want to say is humans plus agents is better customer service. And I think that's crucial, that people should not think it's just one or the other. It's both working together and working in tandem that drives better customer service. That's lower costs, higher customer satisfaction, and more employee satisfaction. That's basically a key summary of what I wanted to land and what we've been discussing.
Even better than what I wanted to ask you.
Love it.
Perfect. Thanks a lot, Kishan, and thanks a lot, Graham. Graham is a Salesforce partner, by the way.
Very nice to meet you, Graham.
So, and well, thanks a lot to the rest of the audience that stood silent and listened. I hope they are back next week when we are talking to Laurie McCabe about the findings of her SMB survey that she recently did. And let's dive into some numbers there that help us understanding the technology buying cycles of SMBs a little better. That might be quite interesting as well. So thanks a lot to everybody. Not in the least to you, Kishan, and not in the least to your assistant who helped setting up this. So thanks again to everybody, and see you next week.
Thank you,
backstage
Thomas,
now.
for having me.